Manager with B Lab US. I'm a growth manager with B Lab US in Canada. I use pronouns he, him, and I'm joining y'all from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on the homeland of the Lenni Lenape people. So a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce the team who will be helping me run the webinar today, as well as our amazing guest. There is a live caption option available to you, but you will need to manually enable it on your end. And then we also invite questions on the content throughout the webinar today. We just ask that you drop them in the Q&A box instead of the chat. And we hope to answer as many questions as we can live today, but any that we don't get to, we'll be sure to send out answers in our follow-up to this event. We may also drop a few links in the chat throughout, but those links will also be embedded into the slides and included in our follow-up email along with a recording of today's event. And so we ask you all to take a moment to use the chat to introduce yourselves, connect with one another. Just make sure that your chat is set to everyone and not just the event hosts. So today I'm joined by my colleague Joao Campos, another growth manager here at B Lab US and Canada. I'm also joined by Carolina Miranda, our amazing B Corp guest speaker. So Carolina brings more than 15 years of experience with the B Corp movement, having certified her last employer in 2009, as well as her current business Cultivating Capital in 2012. She's an industry innovator and the only consultant in the world to teach the new standard since 2023. Launched the first peer learning group for beekeepers, created the first bee ROI framework to measure, manage, and improve B Corp ROI. She's presented twice about the new standards at the Champions Retreat this year. She has been trained directly by B Lab twice as an outside verifier, as well as a inaugural cohort of the Trained Bee Consultants program. Also, Carolina was awarded the Hal Tossig Award in 2024, the B Corp community's highest honor, and in 2020 received the Community Builder Award from B Lab for her contributions to the community. So grateful to have her and her expertise here today. I know that everyone will learn a lot from listening to her. So grateful to have her here. Also have a couple other team members helping out behind the scenes with our tech today. We have Hey Ron, Karen, and Carrie Ann, so you may see them supporting in the chat and the Q&A today as well. So here's our agenda for today, how we're going to spend the rest of our time. We'll do a little bit of an overview of the B Corp movement. We'll get into the business case for certification, why certify, why now. Then we'll move on to our fireside chat with Joao and Carolina. Then they'll pass it back over to me for a quick demo of our platform, as well as some resources to help you on your journey. We'll talk about some closing and next steps so you can keep that momentum up. And then we're hoping to save a little time at the end for Q&A. All right. So the B Corp movement has proven that business can help transform capitalism, but the founder's vision is just as urgent today. So the vast majority of people in countries surveyed believe that the economy continues to favor the wealthy. More than half of respondents said that businesses are not doing enough to address climate change, and research continues to show that consolidation of corporate power and monopoly are key drivers of global inequity. And so the B Corp movement is here to offer a different path. And we're not just here to point to what's wrong, but to create conditions for businesses to lead in creating solutions for the future. And so before we get too deep into the actual business case for certification for folks who are new here, I want to take a step back and set some context. So B Lab was founded back in 2006, and our founders had a vision that was guided by a really simple question. And that question is, could business be used to transform capitalism so that it could serve more people more equitably? I think we all know that traditional capitalism prioritizes profit above all else, but there's a growing need and a demand for a different vision, one where businesses are accountable to more than profit, but also concerned with the impact of their business on the people and planet which they impact. And so 20 years later, the B Corp movement has shown that the answer to the founder's question is a big yes. We've seen companies step up, help shape rules, and create more positive impacts for both people and planet. And so our mission at B Lab is to really keep that vision alive by providing the tools and the community to help companies like yours amplify impact and create a more inclusive economy. And so I'm really proud to say that the B Corp community today is made up of over 10,000 companies across the globe, which are being represented by more than 1 million workers. And one trend that's increasingly clear is that both people and companies want to invest their time, talent, and energy into organizations that align with their values. But the real problem today is how do you know which companies are actually living those values? And that's really the gap that B Corp is helping to fill, connecting a global community of purpose-driven businesses to those who want to support them. And so, for those who can see my background or have been doing the math, it's clear that we are celebrating our 20-year anniversary. With the launch of the 20-year anniversary, we've launched this awesome toolkit for B Corps to help share their stories of joining the community and what it's meant to them to measure success differently. I'll drop the link in the chat here real quick, but this toolkit is just one example of the many assets that we provide to the B Corp community to help them tell their story in a unified way that highlights what our movement represents. And so every year we do things like create a campaign for B Corp Month, which happens in March. We recently launched a green shouting guide to help kind of push back against this green hushing we've been seeing in the market, and also our anniversary celebration. So I'd also encourage y'all to take a moment to check out the campaign. And also, we're looking for your feedback to help us envision what the next 20 years of the movement might look like. So now back to the standards. So you're likely already familiar with other certifications like organic certification, fair trade. Maybe you're familiar with LEED certification. But there are a couple things that really sets B Corp certification apart. The first is that we're a company level certification. So we're going to be looking at all aspects of your business. And the other really unique thing is that we're here to build a community. And that community is really what sets us apart. And we are building a community that believe profit and care go hand in hand. And we know that vision is ambitious, but it's also what makes this work so meaningful. And this work is not easy. Businesses are facing tough trade-offs every day. But what we've learned over the past 20 years is that the way forward is not going at this problem alone. It's going at it through collective action, continuous improvement, and leading with peers who really share your commitment to impact. And so our community and our shared vision makes our movement unique, but it's also our holistic standards that are the backbone of our movement. And so our standards guide our B Corps and allow them to verify their impact, or as I like to say, show the receipts, and use that credibility to drive real business value. And over the past 20 years, this community has generated real momentum and impact. Together, both B Labs and B Corps have worked together to change corporate laws, to create one of the most credible impact standards in the world, and to build a competitive advantage rooted in trust. And ultimately, we want to share that advantage with your organization, but in return, we ask a few things of you. So we want you to also demonstrate your verified impact, connect and improve along with our global community, and to help co-lead this movement of doing business differently. So that's really the big picture. Appreciate y'all sticking with me. So now we're going to dive into some examples of what the core values of certification look like in practice before we go even deeper into looking at some data behind this. So while companies join for a wide variety of reasons, there are a few that are consistent around the globe. So today we see that businesses want more than good PR. They're looking for a clear framework and a blueprint to manage their impact, opportunities to turn individual company efforts into shared progress, and a competitive advantage built on trust. You heard me talk about trust a few times already. I think it's a really important concept. And in life, we all know that trust is really easy to lose, but hard to gain. And in both systems and business change, we don't always have time to build trust relationship by relationship. But that certification can really help provide the proof that you need to build trust quickly and the peers to create real progress in the world. So now I'm going to run through a few quick examples of what these look like in practice before handing it over to my colleague Joao to share a little bit more about how certification can make your organization more competitive and a better leader. So when it comes to our standards themselves, we see that B Corps are 3.7 times more likely to embed social and environmental goals into key decision making. Great example of how these standards can help keep you honest and ensure that you're living your organization's values. And when it comes to collective action, the community is a constant source of inspiration, even for us here at B Lab. One example we love to talk about is the Bee Beauty Coalition, which is made up of more than 50 organizations in the beauty industry who are working together to advance policy and improve the value chain in their industry. And then when it comes to the competitive advantage that you get from, having that honesty and engaging in that community is really that trust piece. And we see that 85% of consumers who are aware of B Corp reported that it influences their purchasing and that consumers are willing to spend more on sustainably certified products. So what we really see is that trust needs proof and that progress needs peers. So now I'm going to pass it over to Joao to talk a little bit more about the ways that B Corp certification can make you and your organization a better leader.
Okay, thank you, Max. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. I'm going to continue on the same topics that Max has covered around how B Corp certification benefits your business. Max was sharing some really helpful data points on the kind of consumer awareness and the impact that B Corp has on a business. I'll dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics. So we'll start with just an overview of some of the main ways in which B Corp makes you a better business leader, makes your business just grow more. So the first one we have is around trust. As we were saying, B Corp is the best way that you can back up your claims, establish credibility in the market. It's also a great way to attract and empower talent. It's a great way to grow your network, to connect with like-minded individuals around the world, and to future-proof your business to ensure that your business is ready to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. So I'll dive into each of these topics and share some more details about them. So starting with this idea around trust, we know that consumers care about who they're buying products from, where they are spending their money. They want to support businesses that feel aligned with their values, but they know that businesses are, great at communicating that they're good. So B Corp is a way to bridge that trust gap. Companies can say that they're the best, but when you have a third-party certifier kind of backing up that claim, it really helps consumers trust that what you're saying is true. You're substantiating your claims and signaling that you are a responsible business. And that just doesn't build confidence from the consumer perspective. It builds brand integrity. It's brand value that will last a long time. This gap is one of the key factors shaping consumer perception right now. Consumers are increasingly skeptical of self-reported corporate claims. Everyone's worried about greenwashing, and we think that things are always greenwashing. So the presence of the B Corp seal helps signal that the claims that the business is sharing are authentic and validated. And this is not just us that are saying that. We've run a number of third-party consumer research reports that have stated that it is statistically significant that the presence of a B Corp seal will improve the perception of a brand's claims. We have a few data points here around the kind of brand perception around B Corp, and I'm not going to go into each of them individually, but you'll see here that there is consumer interest in B Corp certification. There's consumer awareness of what B Corp certification actually is. People are looking out for B Corp. They know it's a good thing, and the people who are aware of B Corp are seeking out those products again and again. So we see a large amount of brand loyalty as well. Moving on to the talent piece, that is often like an overlooked part of the value of B Corp certification. We always think about how consumers perceive a B Corp, but how employees perceive it is just as important. And with the current workforce being a majority Gen Z and millennial right now, similar to how consumers want to buy from a company that shares their values, workers want to work for a company that also shares their values. Mission will only be more important as Gen Z and millennials kind of take over the workforce. By certifying as a B Corp, by having these values in the way that you operate your business, you are attracting employees that care about the same values, and you are activating your current employees around, the things that they care about, the opportunities to get engaged outside of business. So it is a tool to improve workplace satisfaction and well-being. And we hear this from B Corps from across every industry. No, the next benefit that I wanted to talk about is around the idea of community. We always say that B Corp is a real global community, and it's true. As we saw earlier, we're present around the world, and this is truly a community of support. There's many, many ways in which companies and people within these companies find support within the larger community of B Corps. We have online and in-person opportunities for companies to find and connect with each other. This is a really awesome data point here, that over 70% of B Corps in Latin America have formed partnerships with another B Corp. We often see B Corps doing business with each other. They find their suppliers, their partners, their retailers through the B Corp community channels, and businesses within the B Corp community help each other grow. We have a couple of examples here of the different ways in which B Corps connect. First one, we actually just had our Champions Retreat in April of this year. We hosted in Milwaukee this year. So it's a biannual event. It's the largest gathering of B Corps in the US and Canada. We had a few thousand people from across the community get together. And we have learning opportunities, networking opportunities. It's a great way to meet people and build connections. At a smaller scale, we have the builds. BLD is B Corp Leadership Development. And these are regional conferences organized by B Local community leaders. So B Locals are our regional independent associations of B Corps. These are also in-person meetings where you can get to know the B Corps in your region. And then we also have industry-specific associations, the B Beauty Coalition being one of the most active ones. But we have associations around BIPOC businesses, around the tourism industry, around the marketing industry, B2B businesses, the whole range of kind of interest groups that self-organize and share best practices, create connections around the industries. And finally, I'll say that B Corp is really one of the best ways that you can future-proof your business. What this means is that we are living in an increasingly complex market, and by creating the systems and the processes required to attain B Corp certification, you're ensuring that your business will be ready for whatever disruption comes your way. By tracking all of this data, knowing how your business operates, and knowing that your relationships, that your connections are sound, and you're relying on good partners, it's a great way to de-risk your business for the future. You're creating really a structure that can grow and adapt to change. Now, I'll take a second here to speak about the new B Corp era. You might have heard that in the past few years, B Lab has been rolling out a major update to our standards. And as of a couple of months ago, we have fully implemented the new B Corp certification standards. It's a really exciting moment for us here. And I will spend some time talking about what it means for us to be updating our standards in this way and why that's something that we really wanted to implement for many years now. And we're so glad to have crossed that line. So first off, what's really changing? One of the most important elements of the change in the new standards is the introduction of third-party assurance. So now when you complete and you submit your B Corp impact assessment, it is verified by a third-party assurance provider. That separation reflects the need to for B Corp to adopt to international regulations and ensure that there is even more transparency in how your business is audited. We're also raising the bar for the standards. Before, we had an impact assessment with 5 impact areas, and you needed to meet a total of 80 points across those areas. Now we have a set of minimum compliance criteria across all impact areas. So we don't have points anymore. And instead, you have to meet those compliance criteria across every impact area. We also have put collaboration into the center stage of the new standards. There is a greater focus on shared advocacy and cross-sector expertise. We want B Corps to collaborate rather than compete with other companies in their industry, and their standards really reflect that. We've also moved from checkpoints to continuous learning, whereas before we had a 3-year recertification cycle where you recertified every 3 years, completing the same assessment. Right now, in the new standards, we have a year 0, year 3, and year 5 milestones. We've required improvement milestones. So the idea of continuous standard improvement is already embedded into the standards. It's also really important for us to say that, this is not just a standard that B Lab developed and is applying. These were standards that were co-developed with our community of B Corps, of specialists across all of the impact areas. We spent years collecting feedback and co-creating the standards with companies. We've gathered over 18 or 16,000 pieces of feedback from stakeholders in more than 50 countries. So with this update, it's also been important for us to really eliminate ambiguity. We want the standards to be easily interpretable by anyone around the world. And that's also one of the benefits of third-party assurance, where we are ensuring that the standards are objective and interpretable. They're also built on common ground. We know that companies have a lot of different certifications, a lot of different requirements and regulations that they have to comply with. So we've included the aspect of interoperability into the core of the standards. So when you're completing the B Corp assessment, you will see how each impact area, how each question ladders up to different systems or different requirements from other kind of regulating bodies. Similar to this idea of interoperability, we also have put a lot of focus into the fact that this new B Corp standard is a sustainability management platform that helps companies comply with not just B Corp, but with all other sustainability or impact related regulations that they have to comply with. And it's just a data management platform. It helps companies create the systems and the processes to reduce reporting fatigue and de-risk you for the future. I know I've just said a lot of things, so I want to take some time to take a deep breath collectively and welcome in Carolina Miranda, who is our guest speaker today. Carolina, as Max introduced earlier, is the founder of Cultivating Capital, a B Corp certified business. I'll let her introduce herself a little better. So thank you so much for joining us, Carolina. Welcome. So glad you're able to be here with us. Can't wait to get into this chat with you. So I have a few questions for you. We really want to hear your experience as a B Corp and as a B Corp consultant. You have so much familiarity with the industry. But before we get into it, can you just introduce yourself a little bit, speak a bit about your business and your participation in the community?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's such an important topic, and I'm happy to see people coming here to learn more about becoming a B Corp and to better understand how they can actually understand the value of their B Corp certification. So, my name again is Carolina Miranda. My company is called Cultivating Capital. It's been a certified B Corp since 2012. I actually need to recertify the company next year. So that will actually be the 15-year anniversary for Cultivating Capital as a B Corp. I'm a B Corp ROI strategist. And what that means is that I help companies to not just certify and recertify as B Corps, but actually to look at how we can leverage the certification to increase our business value. I am currently operating as a solopreneur, solo by choice. I've also been a micro business in the past. And so I have the perspective of a founder who has gone through the certification and the recertification multiple times. As a consultant, I've also worked with companies of all sizes, from other solopreneurs, companies without workers, up to large companies, B2B, B2C, across different industries. And so I have a pretty broad perspective on the standards. And I've also been involved with the community for many years now. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that later, so I won't get too into it right now.
Okay, thanks for the overview. Yeah, you really have such a unique perspective into B Corp certification and the community. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. The first question that I have for you is really kind of building off of the presentation that we've been sharing so far. We shared a few of the key ways in which we know that companies find value in B Corp certification. So I'm curious, from your experience, which of these resonate the most for you and your company, as well as for the clients you serve?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to my mind, because it's the one thing that I've heard over and over and over again for years, is really the community. Probably one of the biggest benefits that anybody gets from going through B Corp certification is becoming part of the B Corp community, which really is, it's a very unique, it's a very special community. I think that part of the reason that it's such a unique community is that what we're trying to do is a massive undertaking. We're trying to change a very well-entrenched economic system into one that works for all, into one that brings an element of care to it, as Max mentioned earlier. We're really going against the mainstream in this. And so to have people who actually get it, who actually understand why you are doing things a certain way, I think is really invaluable. I think it also has some very specific benefits. So I sometimes think of the community, it's almost like having like a built-in advisory board. I've been very involved with We the Change, which is a community of B Corp women CEOs. And, I know there's been times when I've been stuck and I have a question, and it might just be something very basic that I run into as a business owner, like, what do you use for payroll? And just to have people that I know and trust who say, hey, here's what we use, turned out to be JustWorks. And then I'm like, okay, great, I'll just use JustWorks, right? It just helps me to get unstuck as a business owner. There's also a lot of emotional support in the sense, for me, I experienced this firsthand during the pandemic when I honestly didn't know if my business was going to survive. And I was talking to other women that were in a similar situation. And we really leaned into the community, and that's when we started having monthly We the Change meetings, which 5 years, I guess 6 years later, they're still running on a monthly basis. Um, for my clients, that trust that we were talking about earlier is really important, especially from a B2C perspective. Because if you are putting your product on a shelf, say at Target, and one product has the B Corp logo and the product next to it doesn't, there's increasing awareness among consumers who understand what the B Corp logo represents. And so I saw somebody mention in the chat about buying from B Corps. And so, yes, that is absolutely a trust signal. I think also, and this goes across B2B and B2C, is really the ability to attract talent. Good people are always hard to find. Ask any business owner, they'll tell you that. And so when there's good people that are looking to work for purpose-driven companies, then they are actually seeking out B Corps. And so I've talked to clients who have told me, you know what, we don't have to go out and look for people anymore because people are actually coming to us. So that is actually a huge benefit that I think people realize.
Yeah, it's so good to hear that your perception is kind of aligned with how we've been framing it, what we hear from companies and from the market research that we do at B Lab. And one thing that you said that I want to kind of double down on is the experience of community and kind of the support that you find from people. You mentioned how you've experienced
Mhm.
it with the We the Change group, but can you share a little bit more of the value that you find in networks? What types of networks you've connected with or you have seen, and if at all they have changed how you see competition in this market?
Yeah, so I've been involved with a lot of what we call collective action networks, and I would encourage everybody who's here to consider getting involved with one of the with one of the collective action networks because it's one of the best ways to have kind of a structured group that you can engage with. So three in particular that I've been involved with was first of all with my B Local. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And back before there were other collective action networks, there were the B locals. So that kind of became the first gathering of community on a local, regional level. After that, I mentioned We the Change, and I got involved with that group. That was before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I stepped into or shortly after the pandemic, I stepped into a role with the leadership circle. And then after serving in a leadership capacity for a couple of years, I stepped down to let new leaders take over. And then I am currently on the leadership team for the B Corp Certification Consultants. And that is a new network. It actually started very organically, very informally, with some of us just really getting together in consultants chats, we called them, and there were opportunities to say, hey, I'm seeing this come up during the audits. Are you seeing the same thing? And just kind of to have that peer learning. One of the things that I have found to be probably one of my biggest takeaways from the B Corp community is how in reframing how we approach capitalism, we also reframe how we approach competition. And so it's very common, all of us know this in, the business as usual world. Your competitors are the people that you are actively competing against. I mean, the word itself says it, right? In the B Corp community, perhaps because we are in the minority, there's only 10,000 B Corps around the world. There's fewer than 3,000 in the US and Canada. It's still very much a movement of early adopters. And so I think because of that, what we have in common in terms of trying to see the B Corp movement advance outweighs what the traditional competitive mentality might be. I saw that first with the marketers network, where they were like referring business to each other. They were working jointly on projects. I was like, that is super cool. I've seen it then in other industries, like promotional products, for example, where competitors are working together, and I've experienced it firsthand. So currently, I am working with Ryan Honeyman, who is an experienced B Corp consultant. We've both been at this a long time. And, we started saying, well, what if instead of competing against each other, we actually work together? So we've actually submitted joint proposals because it makes more sense for us to deliver greater value to our clients than for us to be, competing with each other. I also have a partnership in place with Tim Frick, who is the CEO of Mighty Networks, longtime B Corp. His company is a digital agency focused on human-centered design. And so what we've done is we've kind of brought my experience with the standards with his experience in human-centered design. And we've been focusing on how the standards can actually help companies to be innovative. We presented on that at the Champions Retreat. And we are planning some additional workshops along that because it was very well received.
That's so awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear how you have experienced yourself this type of collaboration and this shift of mindset from
Mhm.
competitors to collaborators. And as a consultant, you really have kind of such a special viewing point. to get to experience being a B Corp, but helping other businesses become B Corps. And I'm sure you're
Mhm.
seeing that across the board, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a great perspective just to be able to see everything that's happening across
Yeah.
the community.
Yeah, and then the next question that I have
Mhm.
really kind of touches on this idea of mindset shift. Um, one of the things that often come up around B Corp certification is that some companies or people might look at certifications as a whole as some sort of checklist or a compliance hurdle to get through, even if they are a voluntary certification. It's kind of often something to get through. But you're an advocate, and I know we've talked about this around the value of looking at B Corp. Uh, as a set of standards that actually improve performance and culture as a system to adopt rather than a process to get through. I'm curious if you can share more about, the importance of approaching B Corp certification with this type of mindset and kind of how companies can shift their mindset from we need to pass this test to, this is a framework that we're going to adopt that's going to help us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of on a mission to get people to really embrace the value that the standards can bring, because you can absolutely view it as just a compliance activity. But the truth is that if you look at the standards, every single thing that B Lab requires can actually result in increased ROI, increase in revenue, increase in retention, increase in profitability. I have an entire article where I've kind of parsed that out. So if we look at the certification not as an exercise of what documentation is needed for this requirement, but as an exercise in how do we really embrace this framework so that we can build a stronger business, then I think that that is really something that is going to help B Corps to be more successful and to thrive. And that is going to help the community and the movement as a whole to grow. And that's ultimately what I want to see. Now, in terms of specific things that companies can do, I'd say there's two kind of starting points. First of all, you have to prioritize and resource B Corp certification as the strategic company initiative that it is. So sometimes I see companies like have an intern or an admin handling B Corp because they're thinking, well, again, what's the documentation that we're going to need in order to get through the audit? But you wouldn't hand over a company rebrand, for example, to an intern or an admin. That is something that needs to be managed and handled by the CEO, by the board if you have one. And it needs to be treated as a strategic community, or excuse me, company initiative. Because when you look at B Corp, the very first thing that you have to do under the current standards is articulate why the company exists. You have to articulate how that purpose is embedded into the strategy. This is very high level work. And so I think the first thing is to prioritize it accordingly. The second thing is really thinking about the letter versus the spirit of the law, or the requirement in this case. And I'll give you a very specific example. There's a requirement in the Fair Work section around measuring employee workplace culture. So if you look at it from a compliance perspective, you would say, well, we sent out our survey and now we've uploaded it for documentation, we're done. However, if you look at kind of the spirit of what it's trying to do and how it can actually help your company, you realize that there's more to it than just sending out the survey. There's questions around, well, what are we going to do with that information? How are we going to act on it? Who's going to be responsible for it? How are we going to ensure that this is done year after year? What are we going to do if our employees want something that we can't deliver to them? These are very real questions that go beyond just getting the documentation uploaded. But that is really where the real change happens, and that's where a company can see its culture transform.
Yeah, I love that, the fair work example. It really, and we see that from across every impact topic. It's true. Like if
Yeah.
you prioritize it and you give it the resources necessary to implement these changes and create the structure around it, you will see a lasting benefit from it. And this
Absolutely.
idea of lasting benefit of preparing for the future is something that we already touched on, that I wanted to kind of um, lead our conversation here. So the last question that I have for you is, as both a B Corp leader and a consultant, what piece of advice would you give to companies that are on the fence about starting this journey, or are just worried that this is too big or too overwhelming, especially when we're in this, greater landscape where there's a lot going on in this country and the economy. It's not an easy time for anyone. So, for a company that's considering whether to really embark on this journey, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first and foremost, you're here. You could have been doing a lot of other things this last hour, and you're here. So clearly, there is something about B Corp that is calling to you, and that is something worth listening to. I've talked to so many people over the years who say, well, I don't know if my company could get certified because we're too small. I don't know if my company can get certified because there aren't people in our industry who are certified, right? Like there's all of these reasons why people think they can't certify. Um, Time and again, what I find is it just, especially I'd say for solopreneurs and micro businesses, smaller companies, it really comes down to when the CEO decides it's something that they're going to do. Because once you decide that it's something you're going to do, then it's just a matter of, okay, how do you do it? Right? The standards, it's not rocket science. There's operational changes that you need to make. It's all very doable. It's all very achievable. So I think the hardest part is actually making that decision. Now, once you've made that decision, then tap into the resources that are available. There's a ton of resources. B Lab has put together a ton of educational content around the standards. The other thing that you can do is just break it down, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, B Corp certification, it's big. It is big. I'm not going to deny it. It's not something you knock out in an afternoon. But if you break it down and you say, okay, this week or this month, I'm going to tackle this, and then I'm going to tackle this, then it becomes much more doable and much more achievable. It's within reach.
Yeah. Thanks for assuring us that it is doable. And I've been seeing the chat here. There's a lot of people that are also solopreneurs. They're part of small companies, and that's something that we hear all of the time. When companies think about B Corp, they often think about very large businesses that are certified. Of course, they're very visible, but the reality is that the majority of the community is made up of small micro businesses. So it's good
Mhm.
to hear from your perspective that it is achievable. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us,
absolutely.
Carolina. I will be passing the mic back to Max, who will take us on the final stretch of the webinar. Thank you again, Carolina. We'll speak more soon.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
That was so awesome. Thank you so much, Wow and Carolina. So great to have your experience and expertise on today's webinar. Always grateful when we get to connect and interact. So I'm seeing a lot of questions now. Folks are motivated, excited. They're like, all right, what's next? What do we do? Where are these resources? So I'm going to share my screen and go through a little bit of the resources available to you and what our platform looks like. So if you haven't already, go ahead and Google bcorp.com. Go create your own account in the B Impact Assessment. So when you create your B Impact Assessment, this is what it will essentially look like. I saw in the chat we had some questions, as a company level certification, what does this mean for my business? I have a parent company, I have subsidiaries. Once you create an account, the first thing you'll do is go through a process called assessment setup, where essentially we're going to analyze your company's structure and type to make sure that you're eligible for B Corp certification and to help you understand, will your parent need to be included in this? Can you certify independently? So there are several tasks here that you'll go through to ensure that you're really clear on what entity needs to get certified, what your certification requirements are, and to make sure that you're seeing standards relevant for your business. So once you complete setup, you'll receive an assessment scope letting you know exactly what your company is required to do and what categories you fall into. After that, you'll definitely want to go to the foundational requirement section. These are core requirements that all B Corps must meet. So after finishing setup, highly recommend you go through these to make sure you're aware of this process. A big part of the B Corp movement is this systems change component is the legal requirement. So like Carolina mentioned, it's really important you engage your executive level team, your owners, your investors, because part of becoming a B Corp will be amending your company's legal structure to ensure that you're able to consider more than just profit when operating your business. So then when it comes to the actual standards, the dashboard is where you'll likely be spending most of your time. So after you finish setup, you'll be able to access your dashboard. You'll be able to see, okay, based on my company size, here are the 55 requirements that I need to meet. I need to make sure implemented in my business, and I have evidence to back it up in order to submit. Our platform is great for team collaboration. So like Carolina mentioned, don't have one person kind of holding this all on their shoulders. Get a team engaged, invite them. You can assign certain requirements to them, set due dates, upload documents all here within the platform. So it's a really powerful tool to be leveraging, especially as a solopreneur too, where you're like, I need one place to hold my stuff to guide me and to make sure I'm on track. Um, I also wanted to make sure we called out some of the resources available to folks. So we have a really powerful tool called our Knowledge Hub. So our Knowledge Hub contains a plethora of resources and articles on the new standards. For the folks here today, you're likely going to want to start off in the Becoming a B Corp section. We can see, all of the articles are broken up into sections. So, once you finish setup, maybe you want to go through and learn a little bit more about how do I actually prepare for the audit? What do I need to have ready? You can also create tickets. So you can get in touch with our team, let us know, like, hey, I need help with this. I'm missing this. There's a glitch with my platform. So you can always get in touch with us here through the Knowledge Hub. We also have our website. So the B Lab Global website is an amazing website with tons of case studies, tools, more background information, a couple steps on how to navigate your journey. So just wanted to call these out as some great resources to help. And we'll be sending out the slides to this presentation as well as a resource bundle with several of these links so y'all can access it after. So don't worry about writing this all down now. It'll all be included in the follow-up email. And then now in terms of next steps, another great place to go is our Ticket Tailor page. So this is where you can find all of our webinars and live event offerings. Me and my team also host a second webinar that we would encourage you to sign up for called the Getting Started webinar. We dive a lot deeper into certification setup, project management, how to leverage the platform. So after today, go in, create your account, play around in it, and then come to our Getting Started webinar, which is happening next month on the 23rd. So now I'm going to switch back to our slides as we're coming up on time here, and I want to save a little bit for live Q&A. So we'll be sending out the deck after this as well. You can see here are the 7 impact topics that we will be evaluating your company against. We talked a little bit about the platform, how to leverage it. So again, just to cover next steps, if you haven't already, go ahead and create an account. They're free. Dig through those standards, engage with some of the resources. It can be really overwhelming, like Carolina said, but pick a topic that's important to you. Maybe you're really excited about human rights. Maybe you're more focused on circularity. Pick something that gets you excited and start there. Also, don't do this alone. You have communities all around you. You've heard us really hammer that home today. Reach out to your B locals, reach out to Joao and I. We would love to connect and help you. Also, other B Corps are super willing to share about their experiences. We heard already from Carolina how kind of competition is more about collaboration here in the B Corp movement. So I found when I direct aspiring Bs to other B Corps, they're always willing to set up a call and share their learnings. So you can find all of the certified B corporations on our B Corp directory. And then you already heard me plug our webinar. So just wanted to make sure folks knew about a tangible next step that you can take to help keep that momentum going because we know it is a lot to navigate on your own. So before we switch it over to the Q&A, I wanted to ask one quick poll question from everyone. So we'll get that poll pulled up now. But the question is, do you feel more prepared to make progress on your certification journey as a result of this webinar? So we'll be getting that poll up now, and we'll give folks a moment to answer that before we open it up for Q&A. Awesome. Answers are coming in. Thank you all. So while folks are answering, I'll just put the link up to create your B Impact account. It's app.bcorporation.net to go ahead and get started. And then again, if you need to get in touch with us, you can always log a ticket through the Knowledge Hub, or you can email certify@bcorporation.net. My colleague Carrie Ann is on the back end of that, and she will make sure you get connected to the right person so that we can get you the support that you need. And then our fun, amazing final slide where you can see the B Corp community in action. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions in the Q&A or chat that we haven't been able to address or we want to get to. Let's see here. Anything you're seeing, Joelle, that we haven't addressed yet?
I'm looking at the Q&A now. Why was the equity pricing removed I'm seeing here? We actually still have the equity pricing. It has not been removed. It's been updated from the previous to current standards. So equity pricing provides 50% discount on certification related fees to businesses that have under $5 million dollars in annual revenue and that are owned by certain minority groups. I believe, yeah,
It's
carry on.
40% currently
Okay,
for
thank you.
businesses that are affected by ownership demographics. This could include there's just a number of them listed on the one pager that is linked in the chat. I will also put it on the Q&A. And then if you're a business that's making under 1 million in annual revenue, there is also a discount that can be uh, applied for via email. So the instructions on how to apply are all in the one pager that will be linked here in the Q&A.
Yep, I also just threw it in the chat for folks as well. Yes, I know it can be hard when you're a solopreneur to make it happen. Fees can be a big part of your bottom line, and so we understand that and want to make it as accessible as we can. With our transition to third-party assurance, there is another company that you'll be working with to pay that auditing fee and then having your licensing fee for B Corp certification. And so we do expect some more changes to come with our pricing structure, but we're always going to have our pricing transparently listed on our website, and our fees are always proportional to your company size and complexity. I also saw a question earlier on around B2B businesses. I also think it's really important to note a lot of our data today was talking about the B2C side, but a significant portion of our community is still B2B, especially in the US and Canada. I think it's still over half of our B Corps are B2B. And we're still working to gather better data on that. Joao shared that really cool statistic from Latin America where we see 70% of B Corps there are partnering with each other and having those really cool opportunities to work together and share resources and collaborate instead of compete. And we see a very similar trend in the United States as well. So not just, yeah, like oftentimes we have the B Corps who you see in the grocery stores and that consumer facing side, but I always love seeing the B2B B Corps collaborating, working together, and really making their whole supply chain B Corp. Ben and Jerry's actually did a cool campaign where like everything in one of their ice creams came from a certified B Corp, from the vanilla to the cream, everything. So there are so many ways that we see B2B network, B2B companies getting a lot of value from it. And we even have our B2B network as well, if that's really what you're interested in or focused on. We're also seeing in the regulatory world just a big uptick in suppliers saying, hey, how are you tracking and managing your social and environmental impacts? And so B Corp certification is also a great way to signal to partners, suppliers, and clients that like we're already doing this, we're already measuring it, ask for it, and we have the data to kind of partner and keep moving quickly. So that can also be another value add as you're trying to kind of differentiate yourself in an increasingly crowded market and stay ahead of the increasing demand for regulatory transparency and compliance.
I
Trying
can
to see.
add to that quickly, Max, on the B2B side, because the B ROI framework that I've been building out looks at really the B2B revenue and ROI component. And so that is something that I think soon we'll start to have some data around that. And also, as a quick partnership note, Adrian Gershom and Adrian, for those of you who don't know, is a longtime B community member. We're actually exploring supporting companies in actually doing more business with each other, B2B companies, because that's something that we have been talking about in the community for a long time. And a lot of companies are really ready to start focusing and leaning into that a bit more. So stay tuned on that front.
I love to hear that, Carolina. Yeah, it's so great. I mean, oftentimes, right, like I use the analogy that B Corp is like college. What you put in is what you get out. You can get your certification and, get your degree and leave, but really what gets that value is getting engaged in the community, volunteering, joining, and finding those connections. But I'm so glad to hear that you and Adrian are helping steward that and really getting folks tapped in because we all know having a good advisor, a good club in college can really make that experience so much more valuable and that community feel so much more real. So I know we're coming up on time here. I wanted to just take a moment to thank Carolina again so much for coming to join us in today's welcome webinar and really helping our audience better understand the value of certification, hear it from more than just Joao and I. And again, it's always such a pleasure to have you join us and hear about the work that you're doing and helping companies really maximize that value and believe in this broader vision of systems change that the B Corp movement represents. And then, Joao, thank you as always for joining me today and for my colleagues helping us out in the tech and behind the scenes. Like I mentioned, we'll be sending out the recording, the slide deck, resources, as well as answers to any questions we weren't able to get addressed today. So thank you all again so much for being here. Please don't be strangers, stay in touch. And we'll be seeing y'all at the Getting Started webinar in the 23rd of July. So looking forward to seeing y'all there. And thank y'all again for joining us today.
Thank you all. Thanks,
Great.
Carolina.
Thank you.
Bye.